Last year, I closed over $1 million in high ticket coaching services with my clients. That's zero sales calls, not a single Zoom call, and not a quick, like, hop on a 15-minute call, right? Every single dollar that was closed was in the DMs. And before you tell me that's not possible for your offer, I want you to do some quick math with me, okay? A great closer at the top of their game can maybe do 8 sales calls, right? Top of their game, maybe 8 sales calls. That's their ceiling. 8 conversations, 8 chances to make money, right? Now take that same closer, same person, same salary, take the same 8 hours. That person can still send 500 to 1,000 texts easy, probably more, right? Same human, same cost, 100x the conversations. So my question is, why is your entire business built on the lowest leverage activity in sales? You're running ads to a calendar, hoping that people show up, following up with no shows, watching your closer burn the day on 4 calls that didn't close, and you're calling that a sales process. It's not actually a sales process. It's a bottleneck with a Calendly link. So today I'm going to show you the exact system that I use to close over $1 million cash collected with no calls, the full flow from ad to payment link, 7 steps, 4 assets, right? And 1 closer that scales without burning out. So here's what we're going to cover, right? Number 1, we're going to cover the number 1 myth about why people buy and what they actually need before they hand you money. Number 2, we're going to cover the 7-step process from ad to payment mapped out. Number 3, we're going to cover how to drop a VSL so it actually gets watched, not skipped. Number 4, we're going to cover handling objections over text, including the money one without sounding like a desperate closer. And 5, the 4 assets that you need to build out this whole thing by yourself by the end of this week. Cool? All right, let's get into it. All right, so the title of today's presentation is going to be Close High Ticket Clients in the DMs, No Sales Calls, right? And this is the exact system behind 250,000 cash collected already this year without a single phone call. And so you're going to see exactly the behind the scenes of how that works and how we're able to do it, right? I'm not going to hold back anything. I'm going to show you the step by step as we go through this presentation, okay? So the point I want to start with is this. A great closer can do 8 calls a day or send 1,000 texts. Same person, same salary, same hours, 100x the conversations, right? I said this earlier, but I want to bring some more nuance to it, right? Think about this from a scaling perspective. If me as a closer, if I'm as my creator business owner, right? Let's say I'm getting thousands of leads a day, okay? If I'm getting thousands of leads a day, and then my closer can only handle 8 phone calls a day, what is my actual throughput on the leads that I'm getting? Not very good, right? It's not very good. Basically, we're getting tons of people interested, and then the closers can only handle so many calls at one time. So the only way to scale that sales system to make more money is to hire more closers. Now, the problem with that, though, is when you hire more closers, you also have to train these people, and you also have to make sure that quality stays intact as you are training these people up further and further, right? And so your sales might actually decrease as you add a closer because of that. And so there's a lot of complexities that come with just doing phone sales in general, right? A sales conversation is a conversation. And so whether that conversation happens via text or whether that happens on the phone, it doesn't matter, right? The conversation is the conversation. And this is what I've learned over the last 7-8 years of doing sales for a variety of different companies and industries and working with tons of creators, right? It's whenever the things that I would say to say in text very much mirror and align with the things that you would say on a phone call. So what we learned is that instead of me having to be limited by time and having to deal with 1 phone call at a time for 8 hours, right? I can deal with, instead of 8 conversations, I can talk to 500, 200, 1,000 people at one time. So I can have 100x the conversations, and if I'm moving them all the same way, we can actually get way better throughput on our sales, right? And so that's really the big aha moment or thing that I wanted to click here with that is more about throughput and leverage on the leads that you're getting, okay? How is your whole business built on the lowest leverage activity in sales? And in this case, we have phone calls, right? But in that exact example I gave you just a minute ago, if you're getting thousands of leads a day and you're only got 1 or 2 sales reps, right? How effective are they really at managing your lead flow? And how much more money could you be making if those sales reps were more effective and had a different approach, right? This is a similar thing that we discussed whenever we're working with GovAssist. Now, GovAssist is a passport agencies company, right? So they deal with passport, they deal with visas, they deal with like international travel stuff, right? It's a travel agency. So we had the same thing, right? We were getting thousands of leads a day. We had a sales team in place. They were making anywhere from, 2 to 3 sales a day on the phone, right? But we were getting thousands of leads a day, literally thousands of leads a day. And so when we switched to this text-based model approach, we went from making 1 to 2, 3 sales a day tops per sales rep, and we were able to get that throughput to 20, 25, 30 sales, right? Same rep, same cost in terms of what we pay them, right? Obviously, they earn more commission because of making more sales, but that was a great impact for their business, and that was able to help us that helped us that was a great impact for their business, and that helped us scale up that sales team from basically only making 5, 10, maybe $20,000 a month, and well, making 100, 150, 200,000. And that's just switching the approach, switching what we're doing there. So that way the team can handle more throughput and really like be able to address all the leads that are in the pipeline, not just the one that end up on the phone, not the ones just end up on the phone with you, right? So what you're going to learn today is the full no call system, add to payment, right? And so specifically as that breaks down, so first we're going to cover the number one myth, why people buy and what they actually need. Number two, we're going to cover the 7-step flow from ad to payment link. Number three, we're going to cover how to drop a VSL or a sales presentation or a sales video so it actually gets watched. Okay. Number four, we're gonna cover how to handle objections over text, including money. And then number five, we're going to cover the 4 assets that you need to build yourself in order to have this running for you. Okay. So the big myth, number one, is people need a sales call to make a buying decision, quote unquote, right? That's the number one assumption in this industry, and it is flat out wrong, right? I've seen people purchase $10, $15, $20,000 offers from huge creators from a basic text conversation, right? Even we've been a part of managing those as well. And the reality is this, right? If people know, like, and trust you, and they understand you, and they're a consumer of your content, and they're part of your brand, right? All they need to be presented with is an offer that makes sense. And if it's clear and it fits the thing that they're looking for, then they're going to purchase it, right? And that conversation can happen on the phone, it can happen on text. It actually is better to happen via text because I find that those buying decisions are better there, even because with a sales call there's inherently pressure, right? I got to make a decision there on the call with you. I got someone staring me in the face, waiting for me to make a decision. And then also that sales rep is needing commission at the same time, right? They got to earn money. So there's a couple of different layers right there when it comes to having a sales call versus when you're in text, they can think about it, right? They don't have to reply immediately. They can be more thoughtful in their replies, right? And so there's a level of pressure that's not there whenever someone's making a text-based decision that ultimately allows this dynamic to happen either via sales call or text. And if anything, there are more people now that are going to be more inclined to buy things via text because they don't necessarily need to talk to a human if they have if they get all the information that they need to get in order to make that buying decision. Okay. Nobody ever bought because they heard a human voice. They bought because they had enough information to feel confident about saying yes, right? And so that comes in a variety of forms of online traffic, right? Maybe they read your website a bunch of times. Maybe they read your content a bunch of times. Maybe like there's a bunch of different ways that people get that information. And obviously we will provide that in our sales presentation and answering their questions and stuff like that, right? But nobody ever bought because they heard a human voice. They bought because they got the information. They were sold enough from that information to move forward. Yes. So what buyers actually need is all the information presented precisely and in the right order, right? And a call is one way to deliver that, right? It's not the best way because your calls really depend on your closer having a fantastic day, right? A video is dang near perfect every single time, right? Unless the video itself is bad, in which case, we would just fix the video, right? But the key here is whenever you have a sales asset like a video that you use to make sales, right? You're no longer relying on your people. You're relying on yourself, right? Because you were the one that crafted and filmed that video. And so you're the one that can refine and build that presentation. And whenever we build a sales organization or like a sales process around assets like this instead of people, that's what allows us to start making sales without actually getting on the phone with people because it's more about presenting all the information, right? Cool. So remember this is really key because like I get a lot of questions about, well, Wally, what if they don't watch my video? Here's the key, right? If they're not going to watch a 20-minute video or 10-minute video, 15-minute video, 30-minute video, whatever it is, right? They weren't going to buy anyway. Okay. If they won't watch the video, they're not going to buy anyway. They're not a serious buyer. They're not converting anytime soon, period. The reason that we know this is because we've sent probably tens of thousands of VSLs at this point. So I've seen how people respond to these. And for the people every single time where we chase them down and we try to get them to watch a video or anything like that, right? The reality that we come across is that it's not important to them, right? The reason that they haven't watched the video yet, or the reason that they're not willing to go through these assets that we are going to put in front of them, these digital assets, right, is because they're not sold enough yet, right? It's not important enough to them. The pain isn't big enough that they like want to proactively go through some of these things and learn, right? But contrast that with a person who like legitimately is committed and like is very interested in what you have to offer. Let's say that you offer, teaching Americans how to speak Chinese, right? Well, if you have a specific system for teaching people Chinese that you've come across over the last 10 years, and then the person that you're talking to via the DMs or text, and they don't have any interest in learning about how you learned about Chinese in your system or anything like that, right? And they just keep on asking questions. They're not a real buyer. They're just someone who's shopping. Okay. So I think of like whenever we add a roadblock like this or add kind of ways that people can fall off, that's how I think of it in terms of engagement, right? So if they fall off here, that means that they weren't going to buy anyway, and you save yourself time. Fantastic, right? That's a 20-minute phone call that you might have had with them that you're never going to get back that time, and now you're not going to have to waste the time. So it's perfect, right? Cool. So pre-education isn't a hurdle, it's a filter, okay? The videos that we come up with here, right? They do the qualifying for you. So whoever comes out on the other side is pre-sold, pre-educated, and ready for a real conversation. It is the filter, right? If they're not willing to go through these processes or willing to go through these steps in order to talk to you about your offer or whatever it is you have to offer, it's going to be very unlikely that they're going to pay you $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 for your service, right? So the old way is like this. Every step is friction. Every step they can ghost, right? So we have an ad. They can see the ad and not book, right? They can book a call and not show up. They can go to a discovery call and we can find out that they're not a good fit, or maybe the discovery was done wrong by the setter, right? And then we have our pitch call. And so the pitch call can be messed up by the closer because maybe they were having a bad day that day, their girlfriend broke up with them, et cetera, right? So they just weren't hot that day, right? And so throughout this whole process, ad, book a call, discovery, pitch call, close, you're going to maybe get a sale, maybe, right? And then on top of that, you're also limited by time, right? So your closer has only got certain times available throughout the whole day, right? And so, maybe you're only able to get 2 calls on one day, 3 calls on another, et cetera, right? And on top of that, if that wasn't bad enough, we also have to factor in show up rate. So 50% show up rate would be considered good. So that means for every 100 calls that you book, you're going to lose 50 of them, right? And on top of all this, your closer is usually pitching a cold, skeptical stranger that hasn't watched any content or anything like that before. And so the sale is generally speaking hard, right? And so it requires a higher skill closer in order to do so. So the whole old way of how we're doing it, and it works, right? Like this works, but it's exhausting and it requires a lots of skill, and there's lots of churn and burn that comes with this, right? A lot of you guys watching this video right now, you probably burned a couple sales reps, right? Maybe you've had one, you had a setter before, maybe you had a closer before, right? And maybe you've even had a sold sales infrastructure inside your business before, and for whatever reason, it's not there anymore, right? And a lot of that has to do with these things that I pointed out just a second ago. So the hidden cost of all of this, and it's something that not a lot of people talk about, but it's something that is a huge factor when it comes to really like scaling up your organization in a phone business. Okay. And the more closers you get, the more payroll, and the more no-shows and the less precision, right? So to handle volume on calls, right, you need setters, closers, and managers. And then you've also got to manage each one of those processes, and each one of those people need to be trained as well. So now, imagine as you're scaling up, you've got a new setter, a seasoned setter. You got a new closer, a seasoned closer, right? And so as these leads are getting distributed among your newer team members, they are going to close at a less, basically at a less rate than your more experienced people because they're not experienced yet, but they need the reps. So, but who does all that cost fall onto? It doesn't fall onto them, it falls onto you. So as you're scaling and increasing ad spend and getting all these leads, they're going to start being closed at not as a good of rate because you need to train and different things like that. Also, along with this, you probably are not going to want to manage this all on your own over time, right? So then you've got to pay a manager. And so that further cuts into your margins and profit as you start to scale up as well, right? So I'm not saying that you don't need to pay people for things. I'm not saying don't hire and don't grab managers and setters and closers. But what I am saying is that there is a lot of extra costs that come with scaling, and there can be another way that you can do it, right? Um, so think about it like this, right? Someone could easily have 30 to 50 full conversations a day in text. And when I say full conversations, I mean, imagine like on the phone, right? You've got a discovery call and a sales process. Sometimes some people do like two-step calls, right? Imagine you could do that whole conversation in text in a day, right? And then in this case on the phone, you could do maybe 8 to 10. And that's 8 to 10 of one type of call, right? So if you have a one call process, great. If you have a two call process, then this even gets more convoluted, right? And so 30 to 50 conversations per day, full conversations in text is asynchronous, it's volume at scale, it's precise, and calls don't give you any of those things, right? It's not asynchronous. You can't do volume at scale easily, and it's not precise because you got to keep on training people over and over in drill, right? Cool. So the new way, the PAM system, what we set up, right? Each step does one job, all right? So first things first is we have the DMs, right? So the chat, whenever we're talking to them, right, we are qualifying and building rapport, right? And then once we qualify, build rapport, then we're going to drop a VLD or a VSL, and then the video sells the thing. Once they have watched the video, then we're going to answer questions, handle objections, stuff like that. And then we'll drop a payment link once they're ready. And then they will actually click that payment link and complete the purchase all through DMs. You do everything through the DMs. You just guide them through this process. Okay. You sell the video sells the program. It's the thing that sells the thing, right? And so whenever we're having a conversation with someone in the DMs, like once we find out that they're qualified for their offer, we're gonna basically say something to the effect of, "Hey, would you like some help with that?" Right? And they're like, "Yeah, absolutely want some help." It's like, cool. We'll actually have a video that breaks down in more detail how we could help you exactly. Cool if I send it over, boom, right? We send over the video. That's what I mean by selling the video, right? You notice that I didn't just send them the video and said, "Hey, this is this is a video to help you out," right? I did it two steps, right? I asked for permission first. I said, "Okay, cool. Hey, would you want some help solving XYZ?" They said yes, and then I said, "Hey, this video has everything you need that's going to help you answer all these questions that I talked about just earlier," right? So whenever you give people more context as to why they watch the video, they're going to watch the video more, right? And then the video is the thing that sells the program, aka the thing that sells the thing, right? Or VSL. So cover those points importantly. So the philosophy here, permission-based selling. We want to ask at every step, okay? So you're going to notice that whenever we're doing sales, and as you watch other pieces of my content, right, I ask a lot of questions and I ask permission to make each step moving forward, right? So the reason that we do this is because I want the prospect to be engaged with us the entire way, and they can't be annoyed at something they haven't asked for, right? You notice that in this case, right, because I'm saying, "Hey, do you want help with that? Cool if I send this video over to you. Are you ready to move forward? Are you ready to get started?" Right? Every step that moves them forward in our process is a permission-based scenario, and so because of that, it doesn't come off as salesy because we're asking permission along the way. Number one, we'll cover this kind of now, right? The ad. So the ad sells the masterclass, not the offer. Okay, so our kind of process here, right, is we have an ad that goes to a masterclass that gets them to the DMs, that gets them to the VSL, which is the get payment link, and then a purchase, right? So it's a 6-step flow. Okay, and so the ad is going to sell the masterclass, not the offer. And the one job of the ad is to get them registered for the free training because the ad cannot possibly deliver all the information in precisely 30 seconds. Okay. So then number two, we have the masterclass. Okay. So this is the second step of the process. And it's going to educate, don't pitch. All right. So this is a 15 to 30 minute long form video. You're actually teaching in this video. It's not a 5-minute teaser, not a 25 minutes of stay tuned. It's not a 25-minute pitch video, right? This is time for you to show up as an expert and educate your audience and show and deliver value right here in this masterclass. Okay. Now, once they watch this masterclass video, right, we're going to get them to DM us. Okay. And when they hit your DMs, they're not a stranger anymore. And you are not a stranger to them anymore, is really what I mean, right? They've seen you teach, they heard your philosophy, they've gotten real value now. And so this is the difference between having someone that's just straight off the ad cold and like having like a warm conversation, right? In this case, they've seen your masterclass video, so they spent at least 15 to 30 minutes with you and heard more about you. So you're no longer just a cold prospect to them. You've actually now mentored them and provided value in some way. Okay? And then the CTA that kicks off like afterwards in the masterclass, right, is this DM a keyword for a free resource. So once someone watches our masterclass video, okay, at the end of the masterclass video, we're going to continue the conversation with them. We're going to say, hey, if you really enjoy this masterclass, I have this freebie. I've got a free thing for you. You can DM me for it on Instagram, right? And they'll go more deeper on what we just learned in the masterclass. So ideally, the masterclass and the lead magnet are tied together, right? But this is not a book a call. This is still not selling them, right? This is not a checkout link. This is saying, hey, if you want to continue the conversation by getting the freebie, that's a more in depth of what we covered here in the masterclass, just DM me for it. Okay. Now, that's the step 3, the CTA in the masterclass, to get them in a conversation with us in the DMs. Okay. Then once they're in the chat with us, right, now this is where we start the qualifying process, right? So they come in for the lead magnet, and then we ask them, say something like, hey, what are your biggest takeaways from the video you just saw? And they'll say da 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 blah blah blah, right? And then once they tell us what their big takeaways were, then the next step for us is to say, hey, I may have a way that I can help. Is it cool if I ask you a few questions first to see how I could possibly help you with XYZ, right? And they're gonna be like, yeah, you can ask me some questions, blah blah blah, and it's cool. Now that's where it takes us to step 4. So to walk us through this a little bit more, right? So we go back to ad. Ad gets into the masterclass. Masterclass doesn't pitch, right? They are now inside the masterclass, and at the end of it, they're going to get a CTA to get this keyword for a free resource, okay? Now, once we got them in the chat, right, they've got the freebie now. We say, hey, what are your biggest takeaways? They're like, yeah, these are my biggest takeaways. And it's like, cool, I may have a way that I can help. Is it cool if I ask you a few more questions just to make sure that I point you in the right direction? They're going to be like, yep. And this is where we qualify like a doctor, okay? So the doctor doesn't like walk in prescribing stuff, right? They're going to ask questions first, like what's their situation? What's the gap? What have they tried? How urgent is it, right? You want to seek to understand what they've tried and what's going on with them before you actually offer anything at all, right? So that's what I mean by qualify like a doctor. So the phrase here, mind if I ask you a few quick questions to make sure I can actually point you in the right direction? They say yes almost every single time to this question, and then now you're basically qualifying immediately once you're able to segue, okay? Now, once you're going through that qualifying process, right, then you're eventually going to get to a point where it's time for you to present the offer to them, and that's where the VSL drop is, right? This is your best pitch. It's recorded one time and it's delivered perfectly every time, right? And so instead of having 47 identical sales calls, right, we just have one sales presentation that we show people, and we send it to qualified prospects at the exact moment that needs to be sent, right? We do not want to explain anything about our program in the chat, right? That is way too much text. It's too much to read. There's a lot of it requires a back and forth conversation, and there's no way that you can give all the context that's needed and say everything that you need to say in text that can't be handled by this video, right? So whenever you try to do the video's job in the DMs, you're going to write paragraphs that nobody reads. So please don't do that. Okay. Now, when it comes to dropping the VSL, right? Again, right? This is permission-based sales. So never drop a link without permission. It's going to be a 2-step drop. Okay. Number 1, we're going to build anticipation. So, hey, based on everything you told me, I definitely think I can help. I put together a training that walks through my exact process for It's about 20 minutes. Would it be helpful if I send that your way? Right now, in this case, this says training. Whenever this should be the VSL drop, right? So in this case, it should be saying, based on everything you told me, I think I can definitely help. I put together a video that walks through my exact process to help you get to your goal. It's about 20 minutes. Would it be helpful if I send that your way? Right? Or is it cool if I send that your way? Now you notice, because I gave them that context and ask permission, it gets buy-in, right? So context plus buy-in gets us the yes for moving forward. Yeah. Now, getting it watched, right? Dropping the link is half the job, right? But you want to personalize the setup to their goal, their obstacle, right? And then after you have personalized it to them, you're going to say something like, watch it from start to finish, and then let me know if you're in, out, or if you have any questions. Okay. The reason that we do that phrase, right, is because if I just drop the link, I didn't really give them an action to take, right? And we learn this in copywriting, but a good copywriting principle is what you tell people to do is what they'll do, right? And so, like, if I don't put a call to action on a post or something to get people to comment, then it's very unlikely that they're going to comment on their own. So in this case, that's why I'm giving them options, right? So I'm dropping the VSL, saying, hey, watch it start to finish, and then let me know if you're in, out, or if you have any questions. What are the options I'm giving them? I said, let me know if you're in, out, or if you have any questions. 3 options, okay? So you notice in this process, we are getting them the video asset, but then also we're setting a reason or why they should respond after they finish watching it. Cool? So this phrase, are you in, out, or do you have any questions? 3 categories. They don't have to craft a reply, and you're going to know exactly where they stand, right? So they're going to tell us in, out, or they're going to ask a question really easy, okay? Now, once they've watched the offer, we end up on step number 6, which is objections, right? And objections just mean that they're deciding. So they're like mentally going through the decision in their head and want confirmation that they're making the right call. That's good stuff, right? Like we should be expecting objections or questions even. And there's a difference between a question and an objection for sure. Some people are just seeking clarity and some people are actually objecting. There's a rhyme and reason to both sides, and we should be aware of both of them. Okay. Now, whenever we have an objection, right, we're not going to monologue and hope it, right? We're going to actually use a framework. Okay. So the framework here is clarify first. So half the time that the objection is just confusion. They're not really sure exactly. They need some clarity, right? So first thing we want to do is clarify. So we want to find out like if they say that time is their objection, right? So it's like, hey, I don't really have enough time. Well, first we want to clarify what they mean about not having enough time. So what specifically do you mean about not having time about X, Y, Z, right? So we'll start with clarifying. Then once they tell us what the specific objection is, then we're going to isolate, right? So it's like, okay, clarify and then isolate. So the isolated objection here is it's not just that you don't have enough time. It's that you have 2 other projects you're working on right now and you're not really sure if you're going to be able to fit this in. Okay, now we've isolated. Now we're going to overcome that objection now that we've isolated what it actually is. So it wasn't just time, but it was time because of something else, right? We overcome the objection and then we confirm if they understand or if they go along with our reasoning, right? And then once we confirm that they understand, right, then we're going to ask them to move forward or we're going to move them forward again. So hey, I'll take you through the framework one time just so you get it, right? So we're like, hey, I don't have enough time for this. So first we'll start with clarify, right? So when you say time, what do you mean exactly? Could you be a little more specific with me? And then they're going to be like, oh, well, I don't have enough time because I'm working on 2 projects right now and I'm not sure if I'd be able to fit this into my schedule. It's like, cool. So hey, I totally understand where you're coming from, right? Having a couple other projects can be very, very busy and daunting for the schedule. But that's actually why we have our program set up the way it is, because it's only 30 minutes a day, whatever, right? Overcome the objection. And then we're going to say something like, does that make sense? And it's like, cool. So, did you have any other questions for me? Are you ready to get started? Right? And then that's where we go with the loop. So we're not monologuing and hoping right here, right? But we first want to follow this structure for handling objections. So clarify, isolate, overcome, confirm, ask, and then loop if necessary. Okay? I need to figure out the money, quote unquote, does not mean I can't afford it. Okay? So this is very key with the language. And so I talk to setters and managers and all kinds of stuff all the time, right? And everyone messes this up. So I wanted to pull it out here for everyone to see as well. Right? When someone uses the words, I need to figure out the money versus I can't afford it. When someone says I need to figure out the money, they're already sold. So they probably need clarity. They need affordable options, payment plans, different ways to get started, right? Because they're already bought. They just in their head are trying to figure out the logistics versus I can't afford it. I can't afford it is an objection that we need to handle. And it's very, not to say that it's unhandleable, but it's different than I need to figure out. Right? Cool. So like in the case of I need to figure out the money, I might go ahead and offer the payment plans pretty fast because I already know that they are trying to buy. Versus like if someone says I can't afford it, then I'm going to spend a little more time with them and make sure that they understand the value, understand the program, different things like that, because we don't know if they actually understand those things and if that's a real objection or not. Cool. I want to cover this process, which is the broke flow, right? Or that's what I call it. And so this is when someone says, I can't afford it specifically, right? And this is right after they see the offer and they say something like, I can't afford it, I don't have the money, blah, 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 whatever, something like that. So the payment or the money thing comes up immediately right after the VSL. That's where this is come in, right? We want to start with value first and then payment logistics second. Okay. So what I mean by that is when someone says that I can't afford it, usually not say there's some cases where they actually can't afford it, right? But a lot of times it comes out of sticker shock, right? So they see the price, but maybe they didn't fully understand the video or how it's going to help or different things like that, right? And so all they're just thinking about is the price in this case. We want to start with value first in that case, because if we didn't build value in the offer and then went into payment plans, they'll still say no to the payment plans, right? Because if Sally doesn't understand that this is a system that's gonna help her make $10,000 in the next month, right? Using the exact whatever process she's already got going on, if she doesn't really know that and fully understand that and grasp it, and she's only gonna have to pay $1,000 or $2,000 to make $10,000 in the next 30, 60 days, then like we need her to understand like what kind of value she's getting, right? First and foremost. So when someone says I can't afford it, before we talk about payment logistics, payment plans, anything like that, don't immediately go to it. First, clarify that they understand the value and clarify that they understand the program, because sticker shock is a real thing. And so sticker shock will usually stop people from consuming. And so if we slow down for a second, make sure they understand what they are buying and how they're going to get the value out of it, then we can move them to the payment plans a little more smoothly, right? And that's what we covered right here. Cool. So the close is customer service, really, not sales pressure, right? They're qualified, educated, and their concerns are handled. Closing is just making it easy to get help with what they already want, right? And so in this case, like the what I want you to think of is like the bartender at the bar, okay? Like I want you to be like a bartender. What does that mean? Like, does the bartender worry about making sales of shots and drinks and beers and whatever at the bar? No. It's very like people are at the bar because they want to buy alcohol or whatever it is. They're there to buy drinks. Okay. So it's more about like making that experience simple and easy for them to move forward, and less about you actually hard selling. Okay. And when your offer is really good and people have what you want to have, like people have what you offer and people want to actually buy it, and you're getting tons and tons of messages about it, right? Like making it easier for them to purchase is actually a simpler strategy than trying to hard close every single person in there. Okay. So number 7, the last part is the payment link drop, right? So to walk through that sequence, they saw the ad, they saw the masterclass, they got the lead magnet in the DMs. We qualified them, right? Now they got the VSL. Now we handled their objections after the VSL, and now they're ready for the payment link. Okay. So if they are not moving forward on their own, so meaning if they're not saying something like, hey, how do I move forward or whatever, right? We can go with a 2-step close like this, right? Hey, so based on everything we talked about it, does this sound like the right fit for your situation and what you're looking for? They'd be like, yes. And it's like, cool. It's like, here, okay, awesome. Well, the investment is that. You want to do it in full or break it up, right? So once they said yes to the solution, payment is just logistics, not really sales. The link goes in the chat. It's kind of closed at that point, right? So once we've clarified all their questions, they understand the value, the program, all that stuff, right? Then it's just more about dropping the payment link in the chat. And then obviously we'll still have objections and stuff there afterwards, but that's not as big of a deal, right? So obviously we're still going to have objections and stuff like that afterwards, which we can handle there. But if they're this far in the process, you know, if they're at the point where we're going to drop them a payment link, then it's very likely that they're going to purchase. So we just need to make sure to take our time and answer questions well, right? And I think the really big key with this is not to get impatient. You know, it's very easy for you to want to rush this process because you feel like it can be rushed. And what's more important is the sequence of events that people are going through. And that sequence is infinitely more important than just skipping to the last step. Because even though we want to skip to step 5, step 1 through 4 is what gets them prepared for step 5, which is why it's in that order, right? Cool. So 250K this year, 1 account, 0 sales calls, right? High ticket buyers prefer this, okay? No sales calls, no pressure, no salesperson staring at them on Zoom. They think on their own timeline, very important. And they just need to be provided with the information in order for them to do so. Okay, so high ticket does not need a call. It needs more trust and information. And the masterclass builds trust. The VSLs delivers the information, and you can do this at scale. So honesty check here, right? So text is our default in our sales system, and the call is the exception. Honesty check real quick, right? So text is the default in our scenarios, and the call is the exception. Okay. Some people are going to always want the phone call, though, right? There are going to be some scenarios where they just absolutely need a phone call or they're not going to move forward, right? But if we've taken them through this whole process, a phone call is much shorter and closer to a 10 to 15 minute call and not like a 90-minute 2-call close, because the system did 90% of the work ahead of time, right? Because they still went through the masterclass, they still saw the offer, they went through all that stuff, right? And likely if they still want to call at the end, it's because they just want to have a human touch point with someone because they might think it's AI or whatever, right? But in that case, right, the system still effectively did 90% of the work and shortened our call, because a sales rep can easily have a 10-minute phone call to confirm what they saw in the VSL, stuff like that. They're not going to be answering tons of questions because you've already done that inside of the DM chat. So that's kind of the situation there. So your checklist or your build checklist for this whole thing, right? The whole machine that I talked about here runs on 4 assets, okay? Number 1, a masterclass. Number 2, a lead magnet. Number 3, a VSL. And number 4, a payment link, okay? That's all you need. Masterclass, lead magnet, VSL, payment link, and then a script, right? I want you to record the masterclass this week if you're watching this at home, right? This is so your first step towards having no sales team, right? No fancy software. This is the move that you can absolutely make today. And some of you guys might already have a training video or masterclass that you could use, right? And so we want to lock these 3 things in. Number 1, the call was never the magic. It's the information. People buy with all the information presented precisely. We want to engineer the information properly, okay? Number 2, the structure of a DM sales process, right? We have a DM, which eventually gets us to a VSL, which gets us to a payment link, and then we get money, right? 1 job per step. And then number 3 is that we're asking permission at every single step. That's why it converts. Nobody feels sold because they are telling us that they want to move forward every single step of the way. Okay, guys, got a ton of value out of this video. My name is Wally Wynn. I've got some books down in the description below where you can go deeper on some of these topics. And otherwise, make sure to subscribe for other videos like this on my YouTube. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.